There's your other panel.
That's great. Which one?
Second.
You know, I do this stuff for a living, but
It's comfortable.
yeah. You got any tape or anything you want to hide it, or you good? Oui, j'en sais. Bon. Right behind you is bliss text. Bless. Of course. Can't you tell a more? You can always tell a Morehouse man.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the big city of Selma, Alabama. And welcome to today's panel. My name is Demetrius Calzer. I am a voting rights attorney and fellow with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. And I'm a member of our Black Voters on the Rise team. We want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us for this discussion titled Making Democracy Deliver. Founded by Thurgood Marshall in 1940, the NAACP LDF is the nation's premier civil rights law organization fighting for racial justice on behalf of Black Americans for 85 years. Today, you will hear from a phenomenal group of academic minds, legal minds, and folks on the front lines to preserve a multiracial democracy that is a mere 60 years old. So again, welcome. You could not be in a better place. Now, it is my honor to call to the podium LDF's President and Director Counsel, Janae Nelson.
Thank you so much, Demetrius. He's done such an amazing job, along with Larnay Satchel and the rest of the LDF team, in putting this event together as we do every year. So let's give it up. It is so wonderful to be here with all of you. I am just thrilled to spend another year commemorating Bloody Sunday and being in conversation with so many wonderful people, so many allies and friends that we see, and to hear the laughter of children. That's a beautiful sound. That's a beautiful sound. So my name is Janae Nelson. I am the president and director counsel of the Legal Defense Fund. And every year we take this pilgrimage back to Selma, where it started, where it all started. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm so glad to be here, not only because it's the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday and to commemorate that important event in this country's history, but also so that we can engage in some deep and thoughtful reflection in this moment of democratic crisis, in this moment of resurgence of white nationalism, where we need to talk about how we can make our democracy deliver. And I'm very intentional about those words because at the Legal Defense Fund, we have never just been fighting to save our democracy. We've been fighting for 85 years for a democracy that will deliver for Black people. That is the project. And in delivering for Black people, our democracy will deliver for all people, because that's always been what progress has looked like in this country. So you likely know that there are preparations already underway to commemorate the 250th birthday of this country next year. But I would submit, and I think you all might agree, that our multiracial democracy is just a mere 60 years old. And its birth certificate is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, right? We were not a democracy, not a full democracy. Hey, sis. We were not a full democracy until the Voting Rights Act was passed and Black people began to be included in the body politic. There are people for whom the memories of our separate but unequal past is not distant at all. They can remember very clearly the threats and intimidation, the poll taxes, even the lynchings just for registering to vote. And just miles away in Montgomery, we have memorials to people who have lost their lives trying to be part of this democracy. And so those folks are the original soldiers in that final battle that made this country a democracy. And it was their sheer grit and determination and their faith in the promise of our Constitution that got us to a point where all Americans can take for granted the freedoms that come with being part of a democracy if we can keep it. And that's the question on the table. Can we keep it? And can we perfect it to deliver? So not only do we honor them with our gratitude and our acknowledgement, we must honor them by not allowing democracy to die on our watch. That is how we honor their sacrifice. And so we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the generations that will follow us, to make sure that we have a functioning democracy that delivers. So that's why I'm so excited to be here with all of you, to be here with scholars and litigators and activists and so many who are using all the tools that we now have at our disposal, thanks to our forebearers. We now have a plethora of tools at our disposal to create a democracy that delivers. And let me just say a word that even though the Voting Rights Act gave birth to this democracy, there are still structures that prevent it from delivering, right? There are things that are baked into the system that make it not function the way that it should. And I'm talking about gerrymandering. I'm talking about a census undercount. I'm talking about the limitations that are now on Section 2 because of a Supreme Court decision and the evisceration of Section 5 because of a Supreme Court decision. I'm also talking about the Electoral College and the structure of the Senate. I'm talking about the very foundations of what we call our democracy that have carried forward the vestiges of a system of enslavement of African people. So when we talk about making a democracy deliver, we need to recognize that we are delivering against some of what is already baked into the system. And that's the project. That's the project. But what gives me hope that we can do something that we haven't been able to do before is because amid this mess and this morass, this cataclysmic confrontation that we're only in the very beginning stages of. So let's buckle up. We have an opportunity to build a society where Black voices will not be sidelined and not be silenced. We have the opportunity to do that. And what gives me confidence that we can do it is because we've done the impossible again and again right here in Alabama. Not just Bloody Sunday, but fast forward to the election of Representative Terry Sewell, who's been an amazing ally to the Legal Defense Fund and who is a voting rights champion, bar none. So she could not be here with us today, but we definitely want to say her name and say thank you for the work that she's done to advance voting rights. And then, of course, yes, let's clap it up. And then also to the election of Representative Shamari Figures from the 2nd Black Opportunity District in the state of Alabama as a result of the litigation in Allen versus Milligan. The impossible is done again and again in states like Alabama that so many have counted out of the fight, but we know otherwise. We know that Alabama has always led the fight, and that's why we are here today on Bloody Sunday to commemorate it. And LDF has a particular history with Selma that also makes us very confident in the possibilities. We know that after the violence of Bloody Sunday, when Dr. King and other marchers worked with the Legal Defense Fund to map out a plan so that the Selma to Montgomery March could go forward, to ensure that they could safely cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge and do the work of bringing greater visibility to Black disenfranchisement, that lawyers worked with community members. So lawyers like Jack Greenberg and Constance Baker Motley and so many in our history worked with our cooperating attorneys like Fred Gray, that many of you know, and Solomon Say, and others, to represent icons like Hosea Williams and Amelia Boynton Robinson and Diane Nash, who at the time were ordinary people who did not know whether crossing the bridge was going to lead to the passage of the Voting Rights Act 6 months later. They just knew that if they did not fight, nothing would happen. And so they did what they had to do, and look what resulted from it. So that's what we are commemorating today. That's why we return to Selma every year, to drink from that fountain of inspiration and to know that we can do the same. And if there was ever a moment to remind us of that power and the need for us to learn from our forebears and ancestors, and to know that today is a new day and it is our time to invent and create and imagine something different and to make something possible out of the impossible, I could not think of a more clear sign than what we are witnessing and experiencing now. So with that, I want to say thank you, especially to Pastor Strong, who yes, there he goes, in the back. Pastor Strong, let me just salute you. Pastor Strong is, as I'm sure we all know, the head of Brown Chapel, where the march started 60 years ago. And he has been leading Brown Chapel for the past 12 years. He has been a comrade in arms with the Legal Defense Fund, and he is a civil rights champion in his own right. And we just want to salute you, sir, for all that you have done, and thank you for continuing the fight. And it actually gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce Brent Leggs, who is going to talk about a wonderful initiative to help restore Brown Chapel. Because as wonderful as it is for us to commune here, as we have for the past few years, we know that there is something sacred and special and holy in being in Brown Chapel. And so we hope to return there to that symbol of progress, that edifice of activism. And so I will turn it over to Brent Legs to talk about the initiative of the National Trust. And I thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Brent Legs. I am the Executive Director of the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, where I'm also a Senior Vice President. The African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund was founded in 2017 out of the recognition that historic places have the power to connect us to our past, impact our lives in the present, and even shape our future. To date, we have raised $150 million and supported over 350 sites of Black cultural heritage across the United States, from Alaska to Florida. Through our preservation practice, grant making, and advocacy work, we have engaged national partners and grassroots community members to ensure several sites critical to the story of the American Civil Rights Movement are preserved and protected. From the home of the legendary singer and activist Marian Anderson in Philadelphia, where she lived when she performed at the Lincoln Memorial in 1939, we supported a preservation plan and investment for critical repairs. Or the James and Mary Hurd House in Washington, D.C., which is significant as the focal point of the 1948 Supreme Court case Hurd v. Hodge, which abolished segregation in housing in the District of Columbia and set a precedent that influenced the entire nation. We accomplished this goal of protecting the site in partnership with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, ensuring the permanent protection of both this historic residence as well as LDF's important and historic role in advancing racial and spatial justice. To the Emmett and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument, a historic designation that permanently protects 3 sites related to the life and death of Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley's legacy. We are actively supporting one of these sites, Roberts Temple Church of God in Christ in Chicago, through a multi-phase interior and exterior restoration to ensure the building remains both a functional house of worship for its congregation and a center where the local community and the world can engage with this crucial chapter in American history. And finally, right here in Selma, Alabama, we could not be prouder to be supporters of historic Brown Chapel AME Church through a comprehensive restoration, stewardship, and financial sustainability process. We celebrate Pastor Strong, the church congregation, and this entire community for standing with us in support of this rich American history. Through our Preserving Black Churches program, a $60 million initiative supported by Lilly Endowment, we have supported critical restoration work, preservation endowments, strategic planning, and capacity development at 100 historically Black churches across the country. Several of which, like Brown Chapel, were at the vanguard of the civil rights movement. And just a few weeks ago, we were thrilled to award 30 historically Black churches $8.5 million to sustain the links between the past and the present. I hope you all will join us tomorrow morning right here in this historic space, because we have an exciting announcement to make about the future of preservation work at Brown Chapel and how you can get involved. In closing, we believe that investing in historic preservation and recognizing the stewardship abilities of Black communities to tell the full history of our nation is invaluable, because these cultural assets enable the nation to learn more about its role models who exemplify civic values, self-confidence, and leadership. Together, we are igniting a cultural renaissance, amplifying the work and the mission of those who have gone before and those who carry the torch today to save our past, to shape a brighter and more inclusive future. Each protected landmark carries for it lessons and wisdom that are all the more important at this moment in our history. Thank you.
Next, I want to welcome to the podium our very own Associate Director Counsel, Mr. Todd Cox.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for joining us today. And being told by my, good? All right. I'm considerably shorter than everybody else who spoke. That's okay. Thank you for joining us today. And our democracy, as we've heard, is indeed at a critical crossroads. But we have been here before, and we can find inspiration and lessons from those who fought against attempts to deny us our rights and full humanity. These lessons may help inform today's strategies. Our panelists today will discuss the available tools and strategies that we can use to meet today's attacks on our democracy, and in so doing, collectively honor the memory and legacy of the Honorable John R. Lewis and all of the soldiers of the voting rights movement by fighting for a democracy that delivers for us all. Our moderator is Angela Rye, an award-winning host, social justice advocate, lawyer, commentator, and self-described empowerment tour. And she embodies what it means to be a bringer of truth. Named and raised accordingly, the attorney's no-holds-barred commentary has resonated with demographics all over the world. You've already heard from Janae Nelson. She's our president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. As our organizational leader, she determines and executes our strategic vision and oversees our operation of our programs. Janae has an extensive experience as a civil rights lawyer and expertise in voting rights and election law, just to name a few of her talents. She served as one of the lead counsel in VC versus Abbott, a federal challenge to Texas's voter ID law. She's been an advocate against hair discrimination and has testified before Congress multiple times on a variety of issues. Dr. Eddie Glaude is one of the nation's most prominent scholars, educator, author, political commentator, and public intellectual, who examines the complex dynamics of the American experience. His writings include Democracy in Black, How Race Still Enslaves the American Soul, In a Shade of Blue, Pragmatism and the Politics of Black America, and his most recent book, the New York Times bestseller, Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and its Urgent Lessons for Our Time. For our own. They all take an exhaustive look at Black communities, the difficulties of race in the United States, and the challenges we face as a democracy. Dr. Glaude is the James S. McDonald Distinguished University Professor in African American Studies at Princeton University. Shalala Dowd is a proud native of Mobile, Alabama, dedicated to service, leadership, and community empowerment. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree in American Legal Studies from West Point, and later obtained a master's degree in leadership studies from the University of Texas at El Paso. Shalala honorably served for 6 years on active duty in the United States Army, and she is the Alabama Regional Organizer for Black Voters Matter. Mayor Patrick Braxton is the first Black mayor of the majority Black town of New Bern, Alabama, and he didn't achieve that position without a fight. In 2020, Mayor Braxton, then a volunteer firefighter, filed the paperwork to run for mayor, and as the only person to do so lawfully, became mayor. Prior to that, Mr. Newbern had not held an election for mayor. Since 1965, and instead allowed mayors to pick their successors. starting to sound a little bit familiar, isn't it? For more than 3 years, the town's incumbent leaders tried to bar Mr. Braxton from serving as the town's rightful mayor. In June 2024, under the terms of a proposed agreement to settle a lawsuit between Mr. Braxton and the town of New Bern, Mr. Braxton was able to return to his role as the lawful mayor. April Albright has worked in the area of civil rights law, first as partner at Chestnut Sanders and Pettaway, Campbell and Albright, and institutions through her own law firm, where her experiences included serving as an attorney in the Black Farmers lawsuit, which to date is the largest discrimination lawsuit against the United States. She also served as a presiding municipal judge for the historic city of Selma. Ms. England Albright is now the legal director and acting chief of staff of Black Voters Matter Fund, which is an organization that seeks to build power in Black and marginalized communities in over 11 states through electoral and issue organizing. Mark Morial. One of the few national leaders to possess street smarts and boardroom savvy, is the transformative president and CEO of the National Urban League. And I learned today, for the first time, a former cooperating attorney for LDF. Received a huge history lesson from Mark today. The nation's largest, the Urban League, the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization. He served as a highly successful and popular mayor of New Orleans, as well as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Mark previously was Louisiana State Senator and was a lawyer in New Orleans with an active, high-profile practice, which included working with us on a very important set of precedent-setting cases. He is a leading voice on the national stage in the battle for jobs, education, housing, health, voting rights, equity, and entrepreneurship. Thank you all again for joining us, and I'll turn it over to our panel.
Okay,
I apologize. I did not have the updated run of show. So there we go.
no problem. It is my honor to introduce our dear brother, someone who some of us know as a radical. He is always pushing us to be our very best selves. This is a compliment for me, Mark. Hold on. Always pushing us to be our very best selves, to be bold, to be brilliant in our demands for Black people. He is Reverend Mark Thompson. He is the host of Make It Plain. And I'm not quite done yet. I'm putting a little more on it. Okay. This week, we hosted a 24-hour protest in response to Donald Trump's joint address to Congress. And if it were not for Mark Thompson, the 24-hour of programming that you saw that was flawless would not have happened. So please give it up for my dear brother, Reverend Mark Thompson. A few other housekeeping matters, because as I sit here, some of the people I'm sitting up here with are protesters. So what I need you all to do is to put your chairs in a semicircle as was requested for the camera. Mark, get a little bit closer. There we go. He's not, he's a protester too. He's a lawyer. Remember, they told you that. Don't forget your phone. Okay. So the other thing that I want to take a moment to do, there are so many people every year who work on this commemoration, and they're not always seen. There's some folks that you recognize from TV. So I just first want to honor the people whose names I cannot call, who ensure that every year we remember Bloody Sunday. We remember the legacy, the life and legacy of one of my former bosses, John Lewis. So I want to shout all of you out, thank you. I want to recognize the LDF staff who worked so diligently to put this on too. Sometimes staff don't always get a shout out. And I want to recognize my dear brother and friend, Vince Evans, who is the executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. Vince, stand and wave, stand and wave, stand and wave. Thank you. And there's some other folks that I have to recognize. My brother Derek Johnson from the NAACP. Regina Thomas, who's the former Secretary of State of New Jersey and wears 50,000 other hats. I see she's going to be rebellious and not stand up either. It's fine. Dominique Calhoun, who is the immediate past president of the National Bar Association. Damon Hewitt at Lawyers Committee. Damon, stand up for me. Cliff Albright. Vince, I know what I'm doing. Vince is trying to direct me from the chair. That's why I told you he's my brother. Cliff Albright and Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter. Fatima Ghost Graves, who's at the National Women's Law Center. And everybody else who I may have missed, just turn to your neighbor, and say, I am somebody. Okay, we've sufficiently been recognized. Thank you all. I want to jump right in. And my first question, I think I'm passing you this mic, Janae. My first question is to you, because you talked about our democracy really just coming into play, being birthed 60 years ago. And I think we're throwing this term around a lot, and there are a lot of people who are saying we need to save democracy and defend democracy, and democracy needs to be delivered, but we aren't even all in agreement on what democracy is. So I would love for you to define. You told us what it was, and we know all the vestiges of slavery. What does real democracy look like?
What a wonderful grounding question. So democracy in its simplest...
No.
That wasn't the plan. Can you see me? Oh. Okay. Brother, come up front. Come up front, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Listen, thank you for the suggestion. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay. All right. Let's just loosen up. So democracy in its simplest terms is power by the people. Literally power by the people. It's that simple, but also obviously a complex concept as well. But it means that the people rule themselves. It doesn't mean that it's chaos or anarchy. It means that people organize themselves and have enough responsibility, enough integrity, and enough wherewithal to govern themselves. We don't need an oligarch. We don't need a dictator. We can do it ourselves. But in order for that power to be fairly exercised, people need rights, right? They need to be treated equitably. They need the freedom of expression. They need all sorts of things that make sure that that power is not abused and that they all share equal parts of that power. So that's it conceptually. And even if we just think about the word itself, democracy, it's demos, which is the Greek word for people, and krati, which is power and rule. And so just putting all that together, that's why we like democracy, because we want people to rule, not a single individual, not institutions, but people, and it's a faith in people to govern themselves. That's what democracy is.
It is a great answer. And now I'm going to come to you, Mark, because one of the things that I was thinking about, as Janae was talking earlier about all of the vestiges of slavery that have existed as a part of the fabric of this nation and the foundation of alleged democracy, but now we have a new thing to strive for. I was thinking about how the Voting Rights Act reauthorization, used to be bipartisan. So I was like, let me look up when the last time, and see if y'all understand, follow me on these dates. I'm not going to be partisan, but if I happen to become partisan anyway, it is not a reflection of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. It is just on me. So run tell that. Now, what I looked up was, the last time it was reauthorized was in 2006. It was the Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, and Coretta Scott King Voting Rights Act Reauthorization and Amendment Act of 2006, introduced by John Sensenbrenner, a Republican. And I'm bringing that up because at some point after 2006, something happened. And they said, you know what? don't think this should be bipartisan anymore. In fact, I think I'm gonna fight this. And by the way, in case you are not a student of history, recent history, the president who signed that reauthorization into law was George W. Bush. Right. But I wonder what might have happened 2 years later. Okay, well, I'm gonna hand it off to Mark because I just think that we should talk about why it is no longer a bipartisan effort and what must happen for voting rights to become bipartisan again.
Hey, thank you very much, Angela, and thank you all very much. I remember the day in '06 when we were at the White House on the lawn when George W. Bush signed the Voting Rights Act. He even called my name. We had worked very closely with then, I believe, Ted Shaw and Kwaisi and at the NAA, a whole host of us, Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee, in building ironclad congressional testimony in order to ensure that the Voting Rights Act could withstand a legal challenge. I believe in the Senate it secured more than 90 votes. But here's what's important. At every step, 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed by a bipartisan majority in both houses. 1972, it was passed with a bipartisan majority, signed by Richard Milhouse Nixon. 1982, when it was reauthorized after the Supreme Court gutted it in the Mobile versus Bolden case, it was passed by a bipartisan majority. And I remember at that time I had the great distinct pleasure of working for then Congressman Mickey Leland of Texas, who was a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and it was a very high priority. And all of us at the time were members of BALSA. It was our #1 issue, that and apartheid in South Africa. Come forward to 2006. Here's what happened on the way to the future. This young man from Illinois got elected president. And I really believe that if you look very closely, 2 things happened that really undercut American democracy as we knew it. #1, the Citizens United case. The Citizens United case was a reaction to Obama's ability to raise money in small donations online. He had flipped the script, and the response was, well, we need to get rid of all contribution caps and allow big money. The second was the effort that began in '07 and '08 to invalidate Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And we remember it had gone up in 10, and LDF, we won in 10, and Roberts invited them back, and in 13, it was invalidated. I really believe that the shock to the right of the election of the first black president emboldened and created this sort of wall of resistance. Right. Mitch McConnell, when Obama was president, and then all the way up to the present, would say in private quarters to the Republican senators, we can make a deal on virtually anything we want except one thing, and that's voting rights. We will not make a deal on voting rights. It reminds you of the compact that existed in the 1940s, in the 1950s, in the 1960s, where 13 states, their 2 senators, 13 southern states, had a blood pact to hold the filibuster on any civil rights legislation. So I really believe that historically, the entire bipartisan nature of voting rights was undercut as a reaction to the election of Barack Obama, in the sense that all of a sudden we were having a conversation that we were excited about the advent of a new multicultural, multiracial future of American democracy, while those on the far right felt threatened by it, and they reacted to it by doing what they've done, which was to undercut the Voting Rights Act. And since then, we have been on a long, hard battle to get this John Lewis bill. Now, I really think it's important to understand this. We passed that bill in the House twice. It got to the Senate And we thought we had 48 votes to not only pass the act, but also to get an exception to the filibuster. The man from West Virginia and the lady from Arizona blocked us and blocked us and blocked us. So we have to lay at their feet, right, their feet, the fact that we did not get this renewal or this resuscitation of the voter, and we've got to continue to fight for that. But that history is important. It was once a bipartisan undertaking. We didn't change, someone else changed. And that's what's so crucial and important as we commemorate 60 years.
So I wanted to get that historical backdrop, but now I'm about to call us on our hypocrisy. And Janae, I'm never gonna call you a lie again, but here's one place where we might have a challenge. In 1965, that's when we're saying this was basically born, but there hasn't been an election in a small town in Alabama since 1965. You have just turned the corner on that. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna come to you. I'm gonna walk over. I guess I'm Donahue now. Hold on. That's too many young people in here. Y'all know who Donahue is. So I'm just gonna mind my old black business and come over here. But I wanna come to you, Mr. Mayor, because I want you to stress test for us if democracy is in fact a thing, people power, as defined by Janae. Was it really born in 1965, or is it yet to be birthed?
Well, yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Mayor Braxton out of Newport, Alabama. When she said democracy, and they hadn't voted in 60 something, about 65 years in Newport, Alabama. And when people thought about it and heard about it, they couldn't believe their eyes. So it is true about democracy and people power and trying to take over. And I would say, when I run for mayor, people in Newbern, they felt like they had a voice after I won, and then turned around a couple months later, locked me out of town hall. That was a big setdown for the people in the town. But we kept pushing and pushing, and legal defense came in, and finally we started having different opinions about who was in charge of the town, and lo and behold, back and forth in court and locked out. The bank wouldn't let me see nothing. Everybody.
What was that?
All right now, come on, y'all. Y'all know.
It was going to be very different up in here. In 2 more seconds. Yes.
Because we all got our heads on a swivel.
We okay, everybody? Yeah, we okay. All right.
Okay.
And, yeah, all right. It's more like one side of the town just run the town. The people voiced or people didn't have a say so in nothing in Newport. It was just, you just do whatever we said and just go on about your business. I turned around, when I started running for mayor, trying to change things, I bought 72 flags to hang out for a state holiday. They never hang a flag out for a state holiday. Trying to make a change in Newbern. They took the flags and burned them up. I mean, burned up all 72 of them, just to hold me down and hold the town down. The people didn't even know they could vote for a mayor because they never posted, never even told anybody. If they had a meeting, it was behind closed doors. Town hall used to have a meeting. You didn't know they were having a meeting till you passed by there and see them in there. And then you weren't invited to the town hall meeting. If you try to get on schedule, they'll change the date. Everything was just one-sided until I became mayor. I made a difference. I wanted everybody. I wanted everybody to feel like this town belongs to them, not just one-sided. Everybody in that town when I call City Hall meet, they come up to the meet. They want to be heard, be talking about what they want to do to improve the town. The town could never grow. I'm in the process now to getting a sewer system in. All of a sudden, all of a sudden, the old government raised their heads up trying to block it and come into meeting. We got $1 million some tied up right now in the ground. They tried to shut it down, said they didn't need it. My word to them, if you don't need it, go back home. The other folks in the building need it. And thank you.
And just so everyone knows, tell us again when you became mayor.
In 2020.
Okay. So is it still being birthed? Let me come to my radical brother right here. I know you haven't slept, Mark, but I know one thing that you do is stay woke on issues particularly around democracy. When you think about Janae saying people power, when you hear stories like Mr. Mayor's story, what else do we have to do? We've walked across this bridge for 60 years. What is the next frontier? What do we do when we cross the bridge this year?
Thank you. God bless you all. It's kind of dangerous to ask a preacher to stand up and start talking. If I'm seated, I won't, We're already doing it by gathering here like we are, and we commend everyone here. And I want to first of all commend LDF. This I'm celebrating, and this is where Latasha and Cliff and I all met here in Selma. We grew up as babies organizing Selma. This is actually my 25th year serving on the board, organizing the Jubilee. This is the only civil rights event that is commemorated annually. And for many of those years, most of those years, before everybody else came in and started organizing their own events, LDF was organizing this one for a long time. And always in Brown Chapel, where the march started on March 7th and Turnaround Tuesday started, and then the final march on to Montgomery. We are in essentially the sanctuary of Brown Chapel now because this is where Brown worships. So what we're doing now is important, and I think it's important for these reasons. What we're doing literally right now, there's this meme going around, I am not my ancestors. That doesn't make any sense. We are our ancestors, we must be, we come from our ancestors. And, I've looked chastised a little bit, some of my peers and those younger than me who believe just being on social media qualifies them to be leaders and know what to do. Everybody said, well, let's go do a boycott. Well, have you ever organized a national boycott? No, but we're just gonna do it. Have we read about how Dr. King was successful at boycotts? Letter from the Birmingham jail says boycott is step 4. There are 3 other steps before that. So it's important that we understand our history as we move forward, and also understand that American history is cyclical. 1865, we had the right to vote. We lost it under reclamation after Andrew Johnson sold us out on Reconstruction. It took us 100 years to get it back again in 1965. So we're seeing this again. 60 years later, where our democracy is under attack, our voting rights are under attack, and God bless this mayor. But see, let's look at what's happening to all these other mayors. They're coming after black mayors everywhere they can. Jackson, Mississippi. I just spoke to the mayor of St. Louis the other day. They're coming after her, and they're doing these little slick ways. We're going to take over the airport. They want to take it back from the airport that the Atlanta community built, that is a pinnacle of what was once the black mecca for business. They want to take those things back from us. And they can do it however they want. Now watch this. They didn't hold an election for how many years? 60. Yeah. What makes us think they're going to hold a presidential election in 2028? So that's the first thing. We need to sober up and realize what is upon us and be prepared for it. The last thing I'll say at the moment, there's this Supreme Court. They seem to want to uphold everything he does. So all red states have to do, say we either not going to hold an election or we are going to put him on the ballot even though he's term limited. Y'all watched the joint session the other night, and well, some didn't, but We saw the clips. We were broadcasting at the time, actually. And let me applaud Angela for having the vision to do what we did. And she always reminds us, why is that important? We are being socially engineered on social media. And if they take these platforms away, where will we be? They didn't have no Instagram and Facebook in 1965. Marcus Garvey had 6 million of us in one organization, the largest organization we ever had in the 1920s without social media. So we can do what we will. We can do precisely what we will. And then, of course, he was taken out by a young man who started his career in the Office of Special Services, a young 20-year-old by the name of J. Edgar Hoover, who went on to found the FBI and then organized the killing of all of our leaders, including Malcolm X, who came to Selma and was killed 2 weeks after coming here. So as I wind up, we can't rely on these institutions. We must build our own media. We must build our own channels. We must build our own social media. And that is the way we can go back to the organizing we ought to have.
Thank you, Mark. Your Honor, I'm coming to you as the lead counsel for Black Voters Matter. There are a lot of folks who will say, what are we voting for? What's the point? We found our definition is people power. Can you talk about the other facets of our critical engagement, our civic engagement in this country, and why it matters? When you look at everything that's happening right now, you all could have forecasted this. Y'all did forecast this in your messaging. We fight back was central to this, knowing what could happen if we ever mess with the very fragile state of democracy. Can you talk about what else we must do?
Hello, everybody. Or hey, as we say in Selma, hey.
Hey.
So I'm gonna be honest with y'all. When I first moved to Selma, I didn't believe in voting. I came as a sister who believed in the power of the people, but through self-determination. And so I saw no value in voting, quite frankly, because I thought it was continuing to build a system that I knew historically was oppressing my people. But when I came to Selma, there was a person in office by the name of Joe T. Smitherman. And for those who don't know who he is, he was the same mayor that called Dr. King Dr. Coon. And so I and Cliff and Latasha and others were like, I'd be damned if I'm gonna come to Selma and this person remain in office. So we organized, that's right, we organized, and it was not easy, because even though we come and we show reverence to the bridge, and we go door to door and knock and say, we need you to go out and vote because we were determined to get him out of office, folks would say, for what? And as a young sister, I would be like, because of the bridge. I mean, and their position was, you mean the way I go to the plant? Because that didn't change our community. And if you've had a chance to drive, you know what we're talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. But so here we are, a sister who didn't believe in voting, with this mayor, that we began to organize a campaign called Joe T. Smitherman. It's Joe Gotta Go.
That's right.
And so everybody assembled on Selma. NAACP assembled to Selma, right? Organizations that were here, and folks that are in this room, some on this panel, to get that brother out, right? And we won. After 30 years, the people rose up and they voted him out of office. And I must admit, I will tell you at that moment, seeing the streets down where you go to the bridge, Water Avenue and Broad Street, people had stopped, got out their cars, and they were dancing in the street. And at that moment, I said to myself, this voting thing, there may be something to this. If we can celebrate and take down white supremacy at the ballot box, then we gotta be down with that. And so Black Voters Matter actually started then, even though its incorporation didn't happen to 2016. Because we were determined, Cliff, Latasha, and I, and many others, Tarana was here at the time, that we were going to use whatever tool is necessary to take down this demonic spirit that masks itself as white supremacy, right? where only one race of people will remain in power and control where the resources go. So that is what the moment that we're in right now. And voting, when used properly, can actually do what we did here many years ago. But I will say it's not enough. Because America was designed in order to do what Joe T. Smithers was in office doing. And we got to be honest about that. So what was my mistake? Even though I got drunk on the possibility of using elections to build power in black communities while also taking down a demonic force, I got complacent and comfortable. I forgot that the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment was just the floor. It was not the destination.
That's right. That's right.
And because we started and forgot about that, we had to have a Voting Rights Act, even though we had the 15th Amendment. We had to have a Civil Rights Act, even though we had the 14th Amendment.
That's right.
And that our rights became based on the benevolence or the correct administration or potentially a good judge. That's when our rights would either grow or decrease.
That's right.
And so in this moment, what I do know is, please do vote. When you have the opportunity, if we have the opportunity, absolutely, and vote from the ground up. That's what they did. And that's why in the southern states, they are controlling the nation by ruling what happens on the state level that becomes law by the Supreme Court. So do vote locally, but don't just vote. Build your institutions. Those are the other facets. And I'll end by saying this. Selma was challenging. And you know that it's challenging because we did work together. One day, in a community center we had down just a couple of blocks called the Malcolm X Center, we had opened it. And not a lot of folks was coming by because they thought we were strange, right? But one day, a young sister came in who was a real estate agent. And she said, "Yeah, I need your help because I know y'all fight for people. And I can't get black folks to get along. I need some help." Because even though Selma had 5 banks, major banks, black folks couldn't get along. And so we protested, right? We had a protest. We did, but we didn't stop there. Cliff researched, found out how to get a mortgage, become a mortgage broker, right? Latasha went to Birmingham, became a real estate agent. Me, I was a civil rights lawyer. I learned how to do real estate closings. And then, within 3 months, we put 60 black folks in a house. To this day. So, vote yes. And vote for righteous people. Because when it's done right, as Brother Malcolm says, it can be powerful too.
Yes.
But don't stop there. Don't let nothing stop you. Build institutions that still allow for our people in this time period to live, to breathe, to function. Figure out how to feed your people.
Yeah.
If they take the food off the shelf, go to the farmer. Build up its infrastructure.
Come on.
So that we can still eat.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have enough genius in this room to solve all of our problems. And when we do that, when we build from the bottom up, America, just like it did for Sister Harriet, who didn't care that they said you need to be a slave, right? If we build from the bottom up, America will surrender to our vision. Our vision of what this nation has to become in order for us to be liberated and free. Because, yes, let's not have harm in our communities, but we need more right now. And that is what God is inviting us to do. And I'm sorry. God is inviting us in this moment. And I know that we are fearful.
Preach.
But those brothers and sisters at that church were scared as hell. And so I'm not going to tell you not to be fearful. What I'm going to tell you to do is what they did. They took their fear and nevertheless went to that bridge. and birthed a whole new nation, right? They birthed a whole new nation. So it's our time to build a whole new nation.
Yes, 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 yes.
Well, I would do an altar call, but I think the room was the altar. April, amen.
Amen.
Okay? Wow. We still got two more powerful people to hear from. But oh my God. Like if we could just, somebody plan a meeting for it's nation building time right after this.
Yes.
Okay?
Nation building time.
I want to, she's on the road. She's going to go on, you know that she became a real estate lawyer. She will do all the things to get us free. Seriously, get you some friends like Cliff, Latasha, and April. We're going to be all right, all right? I'm going to come to Major Shalila Dowdy because it's people like you, young people like you, who give me hope that we are going to be okay. And as we have this somewhat of a debate, somewhat of a conversation around if democracy was birthed, if at least the first chapter was birthed, or if it's birthed now, I know that with you, especially when we go back to what April just said about building up our institutions, you were in several of them. You got Delta, you got NCNW, you got Black Voters Matter, you got what I missed? NAACP. And there are so many folks in your demographic that'll say some of our organizations are irrelevant, and you have said not so, and you've engaged. Talk to us about why.
Yes.
Well, if I gotta go after anybody, it's an honor to go after my Delta sister, April Albright. So I'm Shalila Dowdy. I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for coming out to attend this panel. The organizations that Angela named, the NAACP, NCNW, I've been a member of the Young Professionals of the Urban League, I'm in the Army. These organizations paved the way for my generation. Amen. Right, and so now it's time for my generation to pick up the baton. And I've had the opportunity to do that by holding leadership positions in the NAACP, striving to be great in Delta, being able to be a plaintiff in a historic voting rights case led by amazing attorneys from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And so these organizations laid the blueprint and the foundation. And right now, in these trying times in America, we need to turn to those organizations for guidance and leadership. Right now, a lot of millennials don't know what the NAACP is. And for me, as a 35-year-old, I make it my business to let them know that they led the fight in voting rights here in America. That it's the oldest and boldest civil rights organization in America. I bring awareness to the organization that I have the honor to work for, Black Voters Matter, to let them know that we're building Black political power in our local neighborhoods by going door to educate people. Where we're lacking right now is education in this country. The first time the average person sees the ballot is on election day. You have all these physicians on the ballot. You don't know who none of these people are. Education. And so we're aiming to educate them on what's going on in this country, educate them on how a bill passes through the State House, how a bill passes through Congress, so that when they go to the ballot after we've fought against voter suppression in the state of Alabama and got a win at the United States Supreme Court and have been able to elect our new congressman for the Alabama 2nd Congressional District, Shamari Figurs, has just entered the building, right? It's a multi-step process. We see what the issues are, and we go after it. And so when we are asking, what do we do in this country? Turn to these organizations that are over 100 years old. Join them. Are you a member? Because they have laid the blueprint. And for me, as someone who has chosen to take that baton, seek leadership in these orgs, take the baton, and be a plaintiff in a case that at surface level, knowing what the Supreme Court looks like, we didn't know if we were going to get that win. But you got to have that hope that you'll be able to overcome those barriers that are in your place. Because as an African American in America, we've always had to overcome barriers. We've always had to fight for what's right.
That's right.
Right? We got that win. We're still in court.
Louisiana goes to court on March 24th in front of the United States Supreme Court. This is a never-ending battle that we need to be up to take the charge and do the work. Being able to be a plaintiff in this case gave me, as a regular citizen, to have the opportunity to have a voice. And not only does it give me an opportunity to have a voice, but I'm able to educate my peers, educate my community on the importance of what it means to be able to cast a ballot. The work that went behind us being able to cast a ballot. The work that went towards walking from Selma to Montgomery just to register to vote. Now I can do that from my phone. And so these organizations, they have laid the groundwork. There are new organizations that have arisen in our community. We have Woke Vote, which is based out of Birmingham. Right? Black Voters Matter is a new org. Find your place in history and be a part of the change. We can't do it alone. We do have our leaders of our national organizations in here, but these organizations are nothing without its membership. And we are the membership.
That's right.
I will say I don't feel like enough of us are doing the work. And if you are one of those people that are working, look within your community, look within your family, put your family to work. It's gonna take all of us to overcome the issues that we have at the highest level in our nation right now. Do the work, join the orgs, they're there. We have the blueprint, but we need to take hold of the blueprint and be willing to come together as a community and do the work.
Amen.
Major Dowdy, thank you. The congressman is going to join our panel now. I'm going to put some of this down over here. Congressman Shamari Figures has joined us. And also, I want to make sure I acknowledge Maya Wiley from the Leadership Conference of Civil Rights, who's joined us. Melanie Campbell, I saw, did she run out? Oh, well, I'll acknowledge her again when she comes right back. And then also Kimberly Crenshaw from African American Policy Forum. Yes, give it up for our champions. Okay. So we're talking a lot about voting as people power. Now, my good friend Dr. Glod has caught some heat about voting in the past, but he's also been such a champion of our rights and how to advance us. So when we talk about, I'm hitting you all hard on, when we talk about how we advance beyond not voting and dropping it or not voting, but we have to advance our rights, our efforts, and our advocacy. We have to fight for what we see as a crumbling democracy, saving what was, but also building so much better, as April so aptly put it. So Dr. Glod, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so full. I'm so full. I've been overwhelmed being in this space. This is my first time to Selma. I had convinced myself that I had been here before because I had written about Jimmy being here. But I had never stepped foot here. So I've been overwhelmed all day and yesterday. The imagination is key. How do we imagine ourselves as free, as self-determined? How do we see ourselves as persons, as individuals, as a people, capable of making decisions that evidence a commitment to our well-being, that we're not moved around like cattle chewing cud every 2 years and every 4 years, where we're not captured by a particular political party, committed to a certain identity politics that puts lipstick on a neoliberal pig. Part of what we have to do, I think, is tell ourselves a thicker story. I don't want to repeat because I'm out of my element. Let's get a book. Right? Let me get a pen. But I'm thinking about the stories we tell ourselves, the story we tell about Selma. What kind of story are we telling ourselves about the freedom struggle that will empower each of us to understand ourselves as the leaders that we've been looking for? Not to outsource our responsibility to the legacy organizations that have their roles, but to understand our role. What does it mean to tell the real story about Selma? That SNCC was actually conflicted about King coming up in here. That they were upset when he turned around the second march. There was a reason why Malcolm was here, because SNCC was making a turn. There was a reason why some folk were upset as they were marching towards Montgomery. There was a reason why John Lewis lost his chairmanship the next year. There was a reason why Stokely Carmichael in '66, when they get to Greenwood, says, freedom now, no more. What we're going to say is black power. There's a reason why in October of '66, the Black Panther Party was founded. There's a reason why Watts exploded in '65. There's a reason why Detroit exploded. There's a reason why Newark exploded. Tell the story in all of its complexity. What Obama did, I'm watching my time. What Obama did was yoke our story to the American story. It is. I don't want to deny that. But in doing so, he made it a decidedly liberal story, which then redacted the black radical tradition. So part of what I think we need to do and understand is what Miss Ella Baker taught us.
Come on.
That a strong people don't need strong leaders, because we the leaders we've been looking for.
That's right. That's right.
And so part of what we have to do in this moment, right, is imagine ourselves as the folk capable of transforming our circumstance. And understand that as long as we tell ourselves a story of our past, where we've outsourced our responsibility to leaders, then we've set ourselves up to outsource our responsibility today.
Come on.
So the challenge for us in this moment, you see I'm sitting down because I hear my mama telling me to shut up. I hear Ms. Baker telling me to shut up and listen, right? Part of what we have to do is not understand history as spectacle, history as celebration, but history as the wind beneath our wings. Not only do we need to understand that history haunts, but we need to haunt history to find its resources so that we can imagine ourselves as the leaders that we need. So part of what I'm hearing across the board is that we need to step into a new way of imagining our politics. We need to step in a new way of thinking about how we're going to imagine freedom. Freedom ain't this. It's not. Freedom ain't sitting your feet under white folks' table. Freedom is something more than this. Right? 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 And so and I don't want to be performative. Part of what I'm trying to do is to figure out how do we tell that story, right? How do we tell the story of the founding of the country where the serpent was wrapped around the legs of the table upon which the Declaration of Independence was signed? How do we tell the story that the Constitution was compromised from the very beginning? How do we tell the story that the Constitution was basically written by white agrarian slave-owning folk and the country has carried its sins forward, right? Imagination becomes the battlefield for our freedom.
Come on now. Sorry, doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Glide. Thank you, Dr. Glide.
Okay.
So I'm being told that I misspoke, and actually the congressman representing Alabama's 2nd district is the keynote address.
Okay.
I don't know how much time is in the keynote.
We just got the keynote.
He said pass the offering bucket.
Or you can be on the panel.
Okay, or you can be on the panel. Okay, I'm gonna defer to the president.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you a question because this is a hot topic right now. So we saw, well, some of us didn't see, it was reported back, 'cause some of us were doing a 24-hour protest. But on the night of the joint address, Congressman Al Green stood up with, clap for him.
Yes. Give it another for Al Green.
Congressman Al Green stood up in his full, people power. And he pointed his cane. And I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I've been so mad at this cane until that night. I've been so mad at this cane. I'm like, put the cane down, Mr. Green. You don't even look old. Put it down. They don't know you old. But he pointed that cane, and I was like, thank God for that cane. So he challenged Donald Trump on facts and on what his actual mandate was. There is no mandate on Medicaid. No mandate to strip Medicaid, to defund Medicaid, to cut Medicaid. And he wanted to make sure he knew that. He said he didn't know that was going to be what he did when he walked out. The very next day, despite not having censured but 27 people in history, the United States House of Representatives decided to take a vote, a visceral vote, to censure Congressman Green. They ain't censured Marjorie Taylor Greene, only Al Green.
Talk about it.
This is not partisan, this is just,
It's facts.
history.
It's facts. It's
Right.
facts. It's facts.
And then there are 3 other members of Congress in the last Congress who were censured, all who happened to be Democrats. It was a Republican majority for nothing. Historically, censures have been reserved for people who broke the law. So not decorum and not protesting a fascist. That also is a fact. So I guess my question is, Mr. Green decided after protesting that he would be willing to take his punishment. I told him I didn't think the punishment fit the crime.
Right.
But most of his colleagues stood with him in voting no. He voted present, and you also voted present. Yep. And I want to give you the opportunity to talk about why you voted present and what it means to be present in this rebirth of democracy that we're being called into.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, first, I want to apologize for being a little late here. The reason we were late was because we had been called to a press conference outside of the Freedom Ride Museum in Montgomery with Leader Jeffries and myself and Congresswoman Sewell, because the Freedom Ride Museum has been listed by Doge for sale.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
And so we did that.
Right.
But I'll get back to that. The reason I voted present was because Al Green voted present. Al Green voted present in the procedural vote the night before that, and I told Mr. Green, I said, I'm riding with you on this. I'm voting how you vote. I'm voting the exact same way that you vote for yourself, because it was about more than him just accepting his punishment. What it was an objection to a process. The process being this. That night, she mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene had on a political hat, which is a violation of decorum. She was at least twice told to take it off and didn't. What was worse than that, what was even worse than that, was if you watch Donald Trump walking into the House, you will see him speak to a member from Texas and point over his shoulder. And when Donald Trump walks by that member of Texas, that member steps across the aisle, snatches out of the hand of a Democratic member a sign she was holding, throws it in the air. Nothing was done about either one of those.
That's right.
And so his vote was about more than just accepting his punishment. He obviously knew what he was doing was wrong. It was about objecting to a process that's been unfairly enforced. And so, to be quite honest with you, I voted in solidarity with Al Green. I voted for Al Green the exact same way Al Green voted for himself. So it was not a lack of support. It was a vote of solidarity standing with Al Green. Now, what I can't answer for is why 10 other members,
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
when he opened that door, didn't do the same thing. That I can't answer for.
Yep.
But I can answer for my vote. And at the end of the day, I would do it the exact same way again. That man led us there. That man created that moment. And by the way, I've known Congressman Green longer than any other member of Congress except Sanford Bishop, because his former chief of staff, a woman named Jackie Ellis, is from Mobile, Alabama. My father helped her get her first job on the Hill, and she ascended to becoming his chief of staff. And so I rode with Al, literally. That's what that vote was all about, nothing more, nothing less. But what we can't lose sight of, and I'll tell you, look, when I got back, by the time I got back to my office, people had put out these lists of people who didn't vote against it. And so we end up on the same list. Al Green wasn't on the list. But so we get these the phone calls start coming in. I probably got about 25, 30 calls. So I sat there and took the calls personally and explained to people why I voted. Probably 20, 80% of those calls did not know that Al Green had voted president himself.
That's right.
Didn't know he had done it himself. And so that's what happened with that. But let's not lose sight of the fact of where we are in this country. The Freedom Museum was just listed for sale. We've seen EEOC regulations roll back that have been on the books since 1962. The first thing I had to do as a member of Congress once we had a president installed was to push back against the Tuskegee Airmen being pulled out of the Air Force's training manuals. Almost the next thing we had to do was to go to bat for 1890 land-grant college scholarships, which the administration had pushed pause on, but failed to mention the fact that the 1890 land-grant schools are all HBCUs. The two in the state of Alabama are Alabama A&M and Tuskegee. What they failed to mention was it's a whole nother group of land-grant schools.
Yeah, right.
The 1862 land-grant schools.
That's right.
The Auburn universities, the Texas A&M universities, the LSU universities. You think their funding got paused? Not a dime. Not a dime. And so we are in an era right now where we are seeing things that we have never seen before in a White House. Not even the first time President Trump was in office. We are seeing a consolidation of power into the executive while attempting to restrict the size of the federal government to make that power even more amplified. Right. We've seen this playbook before, most recently in Europe in the early 40s. And we saw where that led us, saw where it led them. All right? And so we have an obligation to do everything that we can in Congress. But I will say this, because we hear from some people, it's like, no, everybody should have got up and walked out with Al. Right? Yeah, a lot of people say that. Look, a lot of people say it. Here's what I say in response to that. To my civil rights historians in the room, you know who was almost never arrested at protests? A guy by the name of Fred Gray. You know who was strategically not present at some marches and presents? It's Martin Luther King. And that is because of the simple fact of this. This is a team. This is a team. And on a football team, not everybody catches the ball, not everybody throws it, not everybody blocks, not everybody tackles. You got to know your role, because we got a lot of pushback that we got to do. We got a lot of screaming and a lot of shouting that we have to do. But we also still have to legislate. Right. We still have to litigate. That's right. We still have to educate. We still have to register people to vote. And most importantly, we still have to motivate people to actually get up and go vote. And so there are different roles on this team. And so we will protest some things. We will scream and shout about some things. We will stand up and give speeches on the floor of the House about a lot of things. I gave one just last week about the inhumane nature of this administration, because regardless of how you feel about the size of the federal government, regardless of if you feel all these jobs should be eliminated, we can all agree that there's a better damn way to do it than sending somebody an email on a Saturday night saying you don't have a job on a Monday morning. Right? There's a more humane way. There's a more humane way to treat people. There's a more decent way to treat people. You can incentivize people to retire early. You can freeze new hiring. You can give people a 6-month, a 9-month, a 12-month heads up that we're phasing out your job. Because you can't sit here and pretend that we're this cash strap when Donald Trump goes down to Mar-a-Lago every other weekend, and that costs American taxpayers $3.5 million per trip, and he took 134 of them, 134 of them, his first term, and he's on pace to do it again. So we ain't that cash strapped. Right? Because you could lead by example and not by exception if we was really crunching pennies like that. We can't sit here and pretend that DOGE is necessary to save the government this money while pushing a budget that's going to cost $2 trillion, going to add $2 trillion to the national deficit. And that ain't democratic math. That's the math that's in the budget framework that we were just forced to vote on 2 weeks ago. DOGE ain't saving nowhere close to $2 trillion. And to pay for that $2 trillion is going to be cuts to things that we know and have heard of. Medicaid, what Al stood up about. SNAP benefits, Medicare. Don't think Social Security is not an option either.
Pay for tax cuts. To
pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest of people in this nation. And we're not even talking about regular rich people.
That's right.
We're talking about the richest of the rich. We're talking about people who make north of $2 and $3 and $4 million a year will be taking home $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in tax breaks when they don't need it. When they don't need it. And so we can't be blind to what's going on in this country. And I don't think anybody here is. And it will take reliance on almost every organization that we have, because everybody has a role on this team to play. The last thing I'll say is we have to remain unified. Yeah. Because no matter what you say about Republicans, no matter what you say about Donald Trump, one thing you cannot accuse them of is not being unified. They are unified even though this man is leading them into the abyss, in my opinion. He can stand up and lie. They justify it. And I'm not asking for that same type of treatment. I want to be held accountable for the truth. But at the end of the day, they are unified around a message and a goal and an outcome. So regardless of what your individual issue may be, because we all have them, we cannot afford to let divisions be sown where individual disagreements become the foundational principle by which you do not go vote or that you vote against things. Because those people that, regardless of how you feel about what's going on in Israel and Gaza, how do you think those people who didn't go vote felt when Donald Trump stood up and said, let's knock it all down, all Palestinians get out, we're going to develop this as Trump Gaza? Elections have consequences, and we are living those consequences right now, and we don't like them. I don't like them. But with the help of LDF, with the help of the Lawyers Committee, with the help of Urban League, with the help of every other organization that we have, we can get through this, because as bad as it is right now, here's the silver lining. We're sitting in Selma, Alabama. We have seen this before. And it was way worse. Way worse. So we can do it. We must be unified. We've seen the playbook before. We have leaders around us who have learned from those people. We have people who have served with people like John Lewis that can help lead this way. But we need to remain unified. We must remain unified. We must remain vigilant. We must remain loud. But we also must play our roles. We must play our roles as a team, and there is a role for everyone. That's right. Thank you.
I thought it imperative for you all to hear from the congressman, because I've seen a lot of pushback. And I think the most important thing is that we remember that on 99.9% of the issues, this is our guy. And I think that we also have to remember how hard fought this seat was. So what we can't afford to do right now with the people power is turn that power and abuse it against someone who mostly stands and advocates for us. Even if we disagree with the tactic, we all agree on the end goal. When we stood up for Congressman Green, so did he, just now. He got one more thing. He might be running for Senate with this filibuster he pulling, let's see.
Look, the real quick thing I gotta say, and I gotta stand up and say this, is, and I apologize for not leading with this, but I would not be in this seat if it was not for organizations like the Lawyers Committee and LDF and people that put it on the line for us. Come on up. Shalila, who's from my hometown. So we would not be here. We would not be here without you guys. We would not have this opportunity to have a second black member in Congress from the state of Alabama. So thank you. Amen. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Let's give our panel a round of applause. They were incredible. They have stretched us. I know we have closing remarks. You want me?
No. Y'all, can we give it up for Angela Rye? The voice of the people, the communicator. Amazing. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much. Y'all don't know, these panels come together organically. We never know what we're gonna get. And what did we get tonight? We got a gift. We got a word. We got an experience. I want to thank everyone for being on the panel, and I'm gonna invite you to sit down for one more moment because we gotta close this out properly. Thank you, Angela, again. That was
Extraordinary, extraordinary. And honestly, I don't know how this sister is even standing because she literally helped to conceive of and run a 20, shh. If you're gonna leave, leave quietly, please. She literally helped to conceive of and produce along with others, but she really it was her brainchild. This State of the People address, this 24-hour resistance movement that came together in less than 72 hours and shows the true power of the people when we need it. So thank you for that. Thank you for that leadership. Thank you. And now I want to bring up to close us out the Legal Defense Fund's Director of Policy, Demetria McCain. Thank you, Demetria. Civil rights lawyer, housing lawyer, and expert, and someone who is guiding our tremendous policy work. So I will turn it over to you to close us out. Thank you.
Are you all full? Are you full? I'm full. I mean, some of the things words that we use in this stuff has to do with like Kwanzaa, like Kuji Shakali, our collective working responsibility, our Ujima, our Ujama. That's what we're talking about today. That's what these experts were talking about. Give them a hand. So we've heard power by the people, right? We heard power by the people. We heard about using our own media. Our own media. Let's create and use our own platforms. And we heard if we can take down the white supremacy at the ballot, we've got to vote, right? We heard that too. And what we heard also was, as we've always known, this stuff is hard. This fight has barriers. Find your place in history, be part of the change, do the work. Thank you very much for saying that. And how, for a moment, let's think, how do we imagine ourselves to be free? When you get home, close your eyes and imagine how you'll be free, all right? And we heard, hey, some of us are just riding with Al, right? You riding with Al? I'm riding with Al. I can't speak for you, I'm riding with Al, all right? And we also heard about we've got to legislate, litigate, motivate, register people to vote, and educate. And that we must remain vigilant. But what we really heard, y'all, and this is going to stay with me tonight, what we really heard is it's our time to build a new nation.
Yes.
Okay? And so I just want to thank everybody here. We just want to thank our leader, Janae Nelson, our President, Director, Counsel, the entire LDF staff. Wave your hands, stand up, put this all together. Of course, our incredible panel, our incredible moderator. And whatever you do, stay tuned to all of the Legal Defense Fund's social media channels. Things happen all the time. Shout out to our comms department who keeps us relevant and online. And we certainly hope that you hang around and have some snacks with us while we continue to network, because we're going to prepare to build the nation that we need. Yes. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not going to call you no lie ever again.
Oh, no, that was excellent. Let's get a time. Okay, hot mics, everybody. Turn off your mics. Turn off your mics, everybody. Turn off your mics.
Nice to see you. Are you a lawyer? Fantastic. Major?
Yes, sir.
Keep up the good work. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
If I can be of help, let me know.